video, I'll show you how to create a cinematic edit step by step. You'll also learn a lot of special After Effects tricks that you can use in almost any type of video edit. So after a long time, I'm back with a really packed tutorial. This video has 3 parts. First, we'll make the cuts and arrange the scenes. In the second part, we'll create transitions and masking tricks. And in the final part, we'll make the edit richer with effects, overlays, and color grading. Also, I left the project file for this edit in the description. If you want, you can get it there. I organized everything clearly inside the project. You can analyze the effects and settings directly inside After Effects, which can make your learning process much faster. And if you want, you can also go inside the clip compositions, replace them with your own footage, and use the same transitions and effects. Now let's start the video. First, we open our project and import the trailer clips we downloaded. Then we watch through the scenes and start building a rough idea in our mind. Before doing anything too detailed, we make a quick cut and create a short base edit. The important thing here is not to cut the clips randomly. First, watch the scenes, understand the mood, and try to imagine a simple structure in your head. For example, right here, when she's falling, I can already imagine the water transitioning into Zendaya. And in this other shot, I can picture Spider-Man's flying motion transitioning straight into his eye. So while I'm watching the clips, I'm already thinking about how the scenes can connect and how one shot can smoothly flow into the next. Once the cut is ready, we can move on to the transitions. But before that, we don't want the black bars at the top and bottom, so we scale the clips up a little bit. After that, we select each clip one by one and pre-compose them by choosing Move All Attributes into the new composition. This makes the workflow cleaner and easier to control. To keep everything organized, we rename them as Clip 1, Clip 2, Clip 3, and so on. Now we can move on to the transitions and effects. First, we're going to start with the masking parts and build the main transitions. For example, in the first scene, Spider-Man is hanging upside down and kind of lost in his thoughts. So here, I want to create a flashback style effect, like we're going back into the past. To do that, I'm going to mask him using Roto Brush. Once the roto is clean, I'll duplicate the clip. Then, from the bottom copy, I'll remove the roto. This bottom layer will basically become our background. After that, for the fast scenes playing behind him, I'll bring the trailer footage between these 2 clips. I'll cut it to around 2 seconds and place it behind Spider-Man. Then I'll add the time warp effect to this layer. Here I'll set the speed value to around 1300 to create that fast flashback motion. To make it smoother and add some motion blur, I'll also add CC Force motion blur. I'll set the motion blur samples to around 21 and the shutter angle to about 250. This will make the movement feel much more fluid and cinematic, but I also want to add a transition into this effect. So for that, I'll create an adjustment layer and add wave warp to it. You can play with these settings however you like, but here's what I'm going to use. From pinning, I'll choose all edges so we don't get empty edges around the frame. Then I'll set the wave height to around 400 and the wave width to around 100. At the point where the scene starts, I'll add a keyframe to wave height. Then I'll go 2 frames back and bring the value down to 0. After that, I'll go 2 frames forward from the middle point and set it back to 0 again. Now I'll select the keyframes and press F9 to make the movement smoother. Then I'll move this adjustment layer under the masked clip. Now we can simply duplicate this transition and place it at the end of the scene as well. And just like that, our entrance and exit transition is ready. Finally, for this scene, I'll add hue saturation to the fast background footage and bring the saturation down to 0. This gives it more of a flashback feeling. Now let's move on to the next transition. Here, we're going to create a transition from Spider-Man's eye into the next scene. So first, I'll take the roto brush and mask only Spider-Man's eye. Once the roto looks clean, I'll hit freeze. Then I'll duplicate the clip. For the bottom copy, I won't delete the roto brush. Instead, I'll press freeze again to unlock it, and then I'll invert the foreground and background. This way we get the opposite mask. So now we have 2 layers. The top one is just the eye and the bottom one is Spider-Man's body without the eye. And this will let us control the eye separately, which makes the transition much easier to build. Now, on the eye layer we masked on top, we're going to animate the opacity for the transition. We start by adding an opacity keyframe at 100%, and by the end of the transition, we bring it down to 0%. Since the next scene is going to appear underneath this, we duplicate that clip, go to time and choose freeze frame. This gives us a frozen version of the next shot and we place it under the two Spider-Man layers. Now let's create a camera. Because we're going to use camera movement for this transition, we create a 24mm camera and trim it so it only covers the two clips we're transitioning between. Then we switch the view to two views from the right side so we can control the camera more easily. After that, we take the bottom clip, which is the next scene, and push it back on the Z-axis. That way, when the camera moves forward, the next scene comes through the eye and scales up naturally. Now we add a keyframe to the camera position. Then we go to the transition point and move the camera through Spider-Man's eye. At the same time, we can adjust the position and scale of the next clip underneath. If it looks too big, we can add keyframes to scale and position and adjust it. There are empty gaps at the top or bottom, we can add motion tile to the keyframe layer. Then increase output width and output height and turn on mirror edges to fill the gaps. As you can see, our transition is ready. Finally, let's turn on motion blur as well. From here, we transition into the water scene. For this, we move the water scene a little forward. Here we create an opacity animation with a smooth transition from 0 to 100%. Then we add a scale keyframe. And to create the zoom out transition, we scale the first frame of the water scene up to around 300. At the same time, the Spider-Man scene needs to scale down, so we add keyframes to that layer as well and scale it down during the transition. For the empty gaps on the sides, we add motion tile again and adjust the output settings like before. Then we select all the keyframes and press F9. In the graph editor, using the speed graph, we can create a smooth transition like this, and our transition is ready. But to make this transition stronger, I want to place Zendaya's falling shot into the water scene. For that, we take Zendaya's clip and go into the water scene composition, then place the clip inside. After that, we lower the opacity to around 40%, then enable the 3D icon. Then we adjust the rotation and scale handles to match the perspective of the water. To fix the sharp edges, we select the clip and go to the masks. From here, we choose the ellipse tool first, then double click on it. This will automatically create an ellipse mask on the clip. Then we open the mask settings and soften the edges using feather and expansion. Now the placement is ready. To make it more realistic, we add the tritone effect. Then we use the midtones eyedropper and pick a suitable color from the water tones to match the scene. If you want, you can also adjust blend with original. And finally, for the water blur, we add Gaussian blur and set it to 10. Now when we go back to our composition, we can see that Zendaya is also inside the water with the transition. Some of the next transitions use the same technique, so I'll turn this part into a time lapse and then come back to the new effects. Now we'll add some movement to a few scenes to make them feel more dynamic. For example, instead of a simple cut in the first scenes, let's create a fast zoom in transition. We create a null object of around 10 frames above our clip and connect the clip to it by dragging this spiral icon. Then we add a scale keyframe to the null, and near the end of the clip, we scale it down to around 30. For the edges, we use motion tile as usual. Then we go to the graph editor and create a graph similar to this, so the movement goes smoothly from slow to fast. After that, we go to the next clip and add a null the same way. This time, the beginning of the video should be scaled up, then return to normal size. And here, we adjust the graph the opposite way, from fast to slow. Now we have a new transition, and again, as a time lapse, I'll add a few more transitions like this to some other parts. Finally, we'll make a few strong transitions and then move on to the effects. Here, from the eye closing scene, we want the camera to move upward toward Spider-Man's face. But since we already used a camera transition in the previous scene, we'll pre-compose the first part to avoid any confusion. Now we make it 3D using the 3D icon and drag it back with the Z-axis arrow. Then we duplicate the second scene, go to the first frame and freeze it from time greater than freeze frame. We bring this frozen frame to the point where the transition starts and place it there. Then we make it 3D as well. After that, using the 3D arrows, we position it in 3D space above the first scene. Because now we'll create a camera for this transition. At the point where the transition starts, we add a position keyframe to the camera. Then we adjust the camera to match the current view. After that, we move a few frames forward and push the camera upward toward the second scene. This way, the camera moves from the eye-closing shot into Spider-Man's face. As you can see, the transition movement is ready, but there is an empty gap in the middle. Now we'll fix that. For this, we render the first frame of the second scene as a PNG. Then we go to any free image extender website and extend the bottom part of the image. After we create a suitable image, we download it and bring it back into After Effects. Then we import it into our project, make it a 3D layer as well, and match it with the second scene in the same position. Now instead of an empty gap in the middle, we have Spider-Man there. And to soften the sharp edges, we take the mask that area and soften it with feather. Now we have a much smoother transition. We create a new null object and connect the camera to the null. Then using position on the null, we add a zoom in and zoom out animation to make the transition feel more seamless. We also mask the upper part of the eye scene and soften it with feather. Now it's ready. For the next transition, we'll move from Spider-Man into the next scene through the empty space on the right side. For that, we take the roto brush and mask Spider-Man first, separating him from the background. Then we create a new null object and connect both layers to it, the masked layer and the background layer. On the null, we add keyframes to position and scale at the beginning. Toward the end, we zoom into the empty space on the right side and adjust the graph from slow to fast. To make it zoom into his face first and then move to the right, we delay the position keyframe a little by moving it forward. Now we animate the opacity of the background layer and bring it down to 0 toward the end. This is where the second scene comes in. We place the second scene under these layers. As you can see, when the opacity goes down, the second scene starts to appear. To make it smoother, we add keyframes to scale and position, then scale it down and move it to the right like it's coming from behind. Then it becomes full screen. To fill the empty gaps in the middle, we use motion tile again. We also add a keyframe to rotation to tilt it slightly to the right. Now if we create a new null, connect the second scene to it and add a zoom in and zoom out animation, the transition will feel more seamless. Now we'll make a slight transition from this scene to the next one, moving to the right. For this, we create a new null object. Then we connect the null we used for the previous scene to this new null. Now this new null controls the whole scene. We add a position keyframe, move forward and pull the scene far to the left. Then we adjust the graph again from slow to fast. Once this side is ready, we go to the next scene, create another null and connect the scene to it. This time we add a position keyframe later in the clip. Then we go to the beginning of the scene and pull it to the right, so it continues from the previous scene. By the way, both scenes have motion tile on them, and here we adjust the graph from fast to slow. We can also add a little scale if we want. Now our transitions are finished, and this is how the video looks so far. Now that our transitions are finished, we can make the video more alive with effects. First, I'll show these cinematic light reflections on the edges. I use this in a few parts. To avoid confusion, we go inside our composition and mask our subject with roto brush, separating him from the background. For this light effect, there are two methods, and I'll show both. First, we right-click on the masked layer, go to Layer Styles and choose Inner Shadow. Then we open Inner Shadow from the Layer Styles settings. Here we choose the color tone we want. Then from Blending mode, we can choose Overlay or Soft Light. With distance, we control how much the light is visible, and we increase the opacity. We can also rotate the light from angle using keyframes, but I'll create the light movement with the second option, using the CC Light Sweep effect. First, we bring the center to the middle of the subject so we can see the light. Then we set width to around 220, We bring sweep intensity down to 0, we set edge intensity to 15 and edge thickness to 5. Now we go to direction, add a keyframe at the beginning and change the value at the end to create the light animation. And don't forget, we also change the color to a cinematic yellow tone. Also, because I think it fits this scene, I'll add an explosion video in the background. Everyone who gets the project will also get these effects and overlays. The link is in the description. And now we can use this effect on any other scene we want. We just need to do the masking first, then copy these settings and paste them on top quickly. Our next effect will be in this scene. As you can see, Hulk slams his hands together and creates a shockwave in the film. They showed this wave with dust, but I think we can make it more visual. For this, we go inside the composition and take the ellipse tool to draw a circular shape. But the fill will be off and the stroke will be around 70. Then we make this shape a 3D layer using the 3D icon. After that, we create a new camera for this scene. A 15mm camera will work fine. Now we switch to 2 views from the right side so we can see the shape more clearly and animated. First, we push the shape back toward Hulk's hands with the Z-axis arrow as the starting point. Then, right where his hands hit together, we add a position keyframe. After that, we move forward and bring it towards Spider-Man from behind by adjusting it with the arrows. But this shockwave needs to stay behind Spider-Man, so we mask Spider-Man and place that masked layer above the shape layer. And it looks great. Now we need to make the shape look like a real shockwave. For that, we first create an adjustment layer and add Sapphire's Distort Chroma effect on top. If you don't have Sapphire, you can do the same thing with Displacement Map. I'm using this because it also gives a chromatic look. Now from Lens, we choose our shape layer named Shape Layer 1. And now we can turn off the shape layer so it becomes invisible. Then in the settings, we bring amount down to around -250 and a little later we push it up to around 300 to make it feel more fluid. Finally, we trim the adjustment layer from where the effect starts, and that completes the effect. Now we'll add one of my favorite Sapphire effects, Distort RGB, to a few parts. For example, in this scene we first add an adjustment layer, then we add the effect, and when we play with the amount, you can see how amazing it looks. First we add a keyframe at 0, then we move a little forward and increase the amount to around 100. After a few frames, we bring it back to 0. That's it. Small touches like this really stand out after the final color grading and make the edit look much better. Now we copy this layer and add it to the eye transition scene as well. When we increase the amount here, you can see how the distortion blends with the eye and creates this amazing tear-like look. It looks really beautiful. Also, when effects like this are used between transitions, they make the transition feel more premium, like you see here. A lot of pro editors actually keep these kinds of tips secret, but on this channel I show everything openly with you, so you can subscribe and not miss these details. In the transition we made earlier by masking these characters, we can also add a light effect with deep glow to the first 2 frames of each one to make it more alive. And we can add dissolve shake, then use keyframes to create a shake effect during the transition. Also, I'll add a light overlay to a few parts. This overlay will be included in the project. We set it to screen mode, make it appear with opacity and fade it out toward the end of the scene. I also think this overlay will look really good in the eye scene, so we bring it there as a light. But since this is a 3D transition, we'll only move the overlay upward using scale and position keyframes. And with masking, we'll soften the sharp edges using feather. Now we're on the final touches. For the cinematic bars at the top and bottom, we first create a black solid. Then we add the CC Jaws effect to it. From shape, we choose block and make the height 0. With completion, we can make it come in and go out. We add a keyframe at 100. Then, where we want it to open, we bring it down to around 70. A little later, we bring it back to 100 so it closes again. To make it smoother, you can adjust the graph like mine. We can also duplicate this solid and add it to any part of the video we want. And finally, one of the most important parts, we'll add color. I'll choose a color from the Cinef color pack. If you want, the link will be in the description, and our video is ready. If you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.